In the world of artificial intelligence, one company sits at the center of everything. Not Google, not Microsoft, not even OpenAI. Behind nearly every breakthrough in AI, from ChatGPT to autonomous vehicles, there is a different name quietly powering the revolution. Nvidia, a company that started as a gaming graphics manufacturer and somehow became the backbone of the entire AI economy. Today, Nvidia is worth more than most of the world's largest corporations. Its chips are in such high demand that tech giants are racing to secure supply years in advance. But here's the real question. How did a graphics card company become one of the most powerful companies on Earth? And perhaps more importantly, can Nvidia keep its position at the center of the AI revolution? Or will the next wave of technology eventually replace it? This is the business theory. Chapter 1. The beginning. Nvidia was founded in 1993 by three engineers, Jensen Huang, Chris Malachowski, and Curtis Preem. At the time, personal computing was rapidly evolving. Video games were becoming more complex, graphics were improving, and computers needed better hardware to render 3D environments. The founders believed the future of computing would require specialized processors designed specifically for graphics. So they built a company around that idea. But the early years were anything but easy. Nvidia nearly failed. Its first products struggled to gain traction. Cash reserves were limited, and competition in the graphics market was brutal. Companies like 3DFX, ATI, and Intel were all fighting for dominance. For a young startup, survival was far from guaranteed. Then came the company's first major breakthrough. In 1997, Nvidia released the Riva 128 graphics processor. It was faster than most competing products, compatible with emerging gaming standards, and significantly cheaper than alternatives. The chip was a success. It helped Nvidia establish credibility in the gaming industry. But the real story of Nvidia's rise had only just begun. Chapter 2. The GPU Revolution. In 1999, Nvidia introduced something that would redefine the company, and eventually the entire computing industry. The GPU, short for Graphics Processing Unit. Traditional CPUs were designed to perform tasks sequentially, one calculation after another. GPUs were different. They were designed to perform thousands of calculations simultaneously. At first, this seemed useful only for graphics, rendering lighting effects, processing textures, creating complex visual environments for games. But Nvidia's CEO, Jensen Huang, saw something deeper. Parallel computing. The ability to process massive amounts of data at the same time. That capability would later become essential for artificial intelligence. But in the early 2000s, very few people recognized the potential. At the time, Nvidia was simply known as a gaming hardware company. Yet behind the scenes, the foundation for something much larger was being built. Chapter 3. The Secret Weapon. CUDA. In 2006, Nvidia made one of the most important strategic decisions in its history. The company launched CUDA. CUDA was a software platform that allowed developers to use Nvidia GPUs for general computing tasks. Not just graphics, scientific simulations, data processing, machine learning. For the first time, GPUs could become powerful computing engines for industries far beyond gaming. But when CUDA was first introduced, adoption was slow. Developers needed time to learn how to use it, and many companies still relied on traditional CPUs. However, as machine learning began gaining momentum in the 2000s, CUDA became incredibly valuable. Researchers discovered that training neural networks required enormous computational power, and GPUs were perfect for the job. Suddenly, Nvidia's hardware wasn't just useful, it was essential. Universities began building AI research clusters powered by Nvidia GPUs. Startups used Nvidia chips to train early machine learning models, and large tech companies began investing heavily in GPU infrastructure. Without realizing it, Nvidia had built one of the strongest competitive advantages in modern technology: a software ecosystem. Developers around the world were building AI tools on Nvidia architecture. Switching away would become increasingly difficult. Chapter 4: The AI Explosion. Everything changed when artificial intelligence entered the mainstream. Deep learning models grew dramatically larger. Training them required massive computing clusters, thousands of GPUs working together. When OpenAI began training large language models, Nvidia hardware played a critical role. The same was true for companies like Google, Meta, and Microsoft. AI infrastructure exploded. Data centers expanded rapidly, and demand for Nvidia chips skyrocketed. The company's flagship AI processors, such as the A100 and H100, became some of the most valuable pieces of hardware in the world. Tech companies began placing orders worth billions of dollars. Some organizations even faced waiting lists to acquire enough chips. As demand surged, Nvidia's financial performance transformed. Revenue climbed rapidly. Profit margins expanded, and investors began viewing Nvidia not just as a semiconductor company, but as the central platform of the AI revolution. The market responded accordingly. Nvidia's valuation crossed $1 trillion, then climbed even higher. At one point, the company briefly became one of the most valuable corporations on the planet, all powered by the same core technology, the GPU. Chapter 5: The Risks. But rapid growth always attracts competition, and Nvidia's dominance is now being challenged. Major technology companies are developing their own AI chips. Google has its TPU processors. Amazon is building custom chips for its cloud infrastructure. Microsoft is investing heavily in its own AI hardware. If these companies succeed in replacing Nvidia chips inside their data centers, demand could shift dramatically. There is also geopolitical risk. The semiconductor industry is deeply connected to global politics. The United States has restricted advanced chip exports to China, and China represents one of the largest technology markets in the world. If tensions escalate further, Nvidia could lose access to major customers. Then there is the question of valuation. Nvidia's stock price reflects enormous expectations for AI growth. If the AI boom slows or investment declines, the company's valuation could face serious pressure. Technology history shows that dominant companies rarely remain untouchable forever. Intel once controlled the semiconductor industry. IBM dominated enterprise computing. Even Microsoft experienced periods of stagnation. No company remains at the top indefinitely. Chapter 6: The Future of AI Infrastructure. Despite these risks, Nvidia still holds a powerful advantage. It controls the ecosystem: hardware, software, developer tools, AI frameworks. Companies building artificial intelligence systems often rely on Nvidia's architecture from the very beginning. That creates enormous switching costs. Replacing Nvidia infrastructure would require rewriting code, retraining models, and rebuilding entire computing environments. And for many companies, that simply isn't worth the effort. As artificial intelligence spreads across industries, demand for computational power is expected to increase dramatically. Autonomous vehicles, robotics, healthcare AI, scientific research, defense systems. Every one of these fields requires massive computing capacity. If Nvidia continues leading the hardware powering these systems, its influence could grow even further. Some analysts believe the company could become the equivalent of an energy supplier for the digital age, providing the computational fuel that powers intelligent machines. But the technology industry evolves quickly, and history suggests that even the strongest leaders eventually face disruption. The real question is not whether Nvidia is powerful today. It clearly is. The real question is whether the company can continue adapting as the AI landscape evolves. So, Nvidia started as a gaming hardware company. Today, it powers the infrastructure behind artificial intelligence. It built the chips that train neural networks, the processors that drive modern data centers, and the technology that could shape the future of computing. But the bigger Nvidia becomes, the more competition it attracts. The AI revolution is still in its early stages, and the companies controlling its infrastructure will shape the next era of technology. So the question is simple. Is Nvidia the permanent backbone of artificial intelligence, or just the first dominant player in a much longer technological race? This is the business theory.